American Community Center. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, thumbs up in the back. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, members of the Arab American Community Center, welcome. Today we have a special gathering as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Al-Nabka. Tonight we come together to remember the Palestinian struggle, honor, and resilience of our people, and reaffirm our commitment to justice and peace. We thank you. The committee of the AACC thanks you for joining us on this significant occasion. My name is Suhad Hadi, and on behalf of the Arab American Community Center, welcome. At this moment, if you guys would please rise for a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives in the name of Palestine. Thank you. At this moment, we would like to start the evening. Please stay by. Please stay standing. I apologize. At this moment, we'd like to start the evening with the playing of our national anthem. Hey, Dawood. Suhad Hadi.
On behalf of the Arab American Community Center, I want to thank each of you for joining us tonight. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to our distinguished panel members, Mrs. Alison, Weir, and Mr. Mohammad, Abd-Elsalam. It's a privilege to be in such a company tonight. Tonight we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Nakba, or the Palestinian catastrophe as it has been known. The Nakba holds a deep meaning not just for our community, but for Palestinians as a people united toward the vision of the return of their homeland. I, myself, am a first-generation Palestinian American, but I'm also the daughter of the father, who is the child of the Nakba. He was 10 years old at the time Kafr Anna was taken away by the Israeli soldiers. These stories were in our home as it was in the homes of so many other Palestinian families. At a young age, we became all too familiar with a list of words which included war, resistance, occupation, freedom, right of return, Zionism, activism, and the list would grow to include ethnic cleansing, appropriation, and apartheid. But we also grew up with what was generational resistance. A master plan to remove an indigenous people from their homeland was put into effect by the Zionist movement with the UN Partition Resolution as early as 1947 and even earlier, though it was anticipated to take effect in May of 1948. The Balfour Declaration further set the tone for the development of a Jewish state. However, a two-state solution was not the desire of this movement. The removal of Palestinians and the destruction of villages began, and they were rapidly replaced by Israeli settlements. Today, against the resistance of the Palestinians near and far, the Nakba continues. Two regions, Gaza and the West Bank, remain under what is described as Palestinian control, under occupation. However, infringement upon these regions continues, and Gaza is now described as the largest open-air prison. In the calculations of an attempt to ethnically cleanse a population of indigenous people from their land was the underestimation of the persistence of that people. What they underestimated was the determination of future generations. Today, we are armed with first, second, and in some cases, third-generation children who carry the torch of their ancestors in a unified vision, goal, and dream of the return of a homeland. Today, we have the power to gather, unite, and educate on so many levels, and social media forums have opened these doors even wider. We are louder, and we are being heard. I am proud that we can gather like we are tonight. I am proud that we can engage ourselves in productive discussion across the table from various backgrounds and raise awareness of the perpetuation of the Nakba and the Palestinian cause as a whole. I'm proud that we have an organization like the Arab American Community Center to bring many of us together in a larger collaborative effort. I look in the audience and I see and I hear our youth, my children's generation, and this gives me continued hope. It reminds me that although the Nakba was in 1948, it will never be forgotten. My parents used to pray to see peace in their lifetime. As they grew in age, that prayer changed to the hope of peace in their children's lifetime. Now, I believe we pray for peace to come in our own children's lifetime and hope they now will hold the key. I thank you for joining us this evening, and I hope together we can continue to grow, and I hope you enjoy the program we have for you tonight. Thank you.
Our agenda today begins with a special presentation from our local youth. They will be reciting eyewitness accounts from a handful of eradicated Palestinian villages. First up, representing the city of Al-Tantura, Suhad Hadi.
Hello, my name is Suhad Hadi. I represent the Palestinian residents of Anthem in the district of Haifa with a population of 1,490 people. On May 22, 1948, according to different eyewitness accounts by retired members of the Zionist Alexandroni Brigade of Haganah, between 120 to 200 people were murdered in the streets inside the village mosque and buried in a mass grave. Today, Dora Beach and its parking lot were built on top of the mass grave of the Al-Nabka residents. I do have a picture of the Mediterranean Sea village before the Nabka. The village was erased completely after 1948 by the Israeli Defense Forces. Mohammad Abu-Hamid, born in 1935, resident of the Yarmouk refugee camp in Damascus, Syria. We had gathered to the center of the village, in the house of the Hajj, Muhammad. When the village fell and the soldiers entered, they herded us onto the beach. On the way near the house of Badron, on the street leading to the mosque, I saw a body of 7 young people from the village. A woman, Iqrit, started to scream, but in a burst of gunfire she was silenced for good. This woman was the mother of a martyr, Abd-Elsalam, who was killed during an attack by the Jews of Haifa at the end of 1947. When they loaded us onto the trucks, we saw bodies piled along the road like stacked wood. A woman recognized her nephew amongst the dead. It was Muhammad Abu-Idris. She started to scream, but she didn't notice yet that her 3 sons had met the same fate. Her sons, Ahmad, Sulaiman, Khalid, and Mustafa, had been killed, but we only learned this later, in exile. But the mother always refused to believe it, and insisted they had escaped to Egypt, and would come back to find her one day. She spent the rest of her life waiting for them. The Palestinian residents of Anthem still carry the keys and return to their home soon.
Next up, for Deir Yassin, we got Zeid Atwa. Zeid Atwa.
My name is Deir Yassin. Today, I represent the Palestinian residents of the city of Deir Yassin. April 4th, 1948. Forcibly displaced and massacred the residents. Terror gangs in Iqrit and Stern, headed by the former Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem, killed more than 107 civilian men, women, and children at their homes, in the streets and inside Yassin Mosque, where civilians used to seek refuge. More than 25 prisoners were paraded in trucks and armored vehicles in Jerusalem as trophies to later return them to their village to be executed and buried. Today, where Deir Yassin once stood has been built over to make way for the Israeli construction and settlements. I do have a picture of one of the remaining homes of Deir Yassin being used by Israeli government agencies. Eyewitnesses currently lives in various refugee camps of Amari and Dehesha. Mr. Fahimi Zaydan, 12 years old. The Jews ordered all of our family to line up against the wall and they started shooting us. I asked him aside, but most of us children were saved because we hid behind our parents. The bullets hit my sister Kedri, 4 years old, in the head, my sister Sama, 8 years old, in the cheek, my brother Mohammad, 7 years old, in the chest, but all the others with us against the wall were killed. My father, my mother, my grandfather and grandmother, my uncles and aunts, and some of their children. Miss Halim Aid, 30 years old. A man shot a bullet into the neck of my sister Sadia, who was 9 months pregnant. Then he cut her stomach open with the butcher's knife. Miss Nana Harhawi, 16 years old, saw a man take a kind of sword and slash my neighbor Jamil Ish from head to toe and do the same thing on the steps to my house to my cousin Fatih. Mr. Muhammad Jabir, a student. The Jews broke in, drove everybody outside, put them against the wall, and shot them. One of the women was carrying a 3-month-old baby. We were inside the house. We heard shooting outside. My mother woke us up. We knew the Jews had attacked us. My cousin and my sister came running and said the Jews were already in their garden. In the meantime, In the meantime, fighting became heavier, and we heard lots of gunshots outside. A bomb was thrown at us and exploded close to where we were in the yard. My sister-in-law did not want to leave. She was frightened. The girl was 2 months old and the boy was about 3. I took the two, and my mother said we should go to my uncle's house. I saw how Hulu was killed, along with her husband, her son, her brother, and Mohammad. Hulu and Dawn went out to collect the body of her husband. They shot her and she fell over his body. I also saw Deir Yassin, a nurse from Jerusalem, serving in the village. As she was shot before the house door of Musa. The daughter of Abd-Elsalam was shot dead as she held her niece, a baby. The baby was shot too. Whoever tried to run away was shot dead. The Palestinians of Deir Yassin still carry the keys to their houses and will return to their homes, inshallah, soon.
Next up, representing the city of Iqrit, Al-Nabka.
My name is Al-Nabka. I represent the Palestinian residents of a Christian village named Iqrit, near the Lebanon borders. District, Eka, population 490, November 1st, 1948. The Palestinians of Iqrit were forcibly kicked out of their homes by the attacking Zionist Oded Brigade, Operation Haram. Today, the only ruin left of Iqrit is the old church. This is a story as told by Abd-Elsalam, who lives in Haifa. Iqrit was a small Christian village of around 500 inhabitants, very close to Palestine's border with Lebanon. The village was ethnically cleansed in 1948 and destroyed in 1951, except for the church. Its villagers became internally displaced, what Israel called present absences. We were happy. We had figs, hummus, and olive trees. We planted everything except sugar and rice. My father had a lot of land, around 100 tons. We made flour, grew lentils and beans, all kinds of vegetables, and olives. The only thing that my father sold was tobacco. He died when I was very young, and my older brother was left in church. Our home was made of big stones and had been built by my grandfather. In 1948, there was no residence in the village. The Zionist force entered the village and we raised a white flag. We did not have any weapons. They told us to flee to Al-Rama and said it would be only for 2 weeks, and that was for our own safety. We were transported by military trucks, but I did not go with the rest. My brother told me to go to Lebanon, to Musa, to our aunt, in order to save the animals. I walked to Lebanon with 5 cows, a camel, a donkey, and a horse. I waited for the message that my brother was supposed to send when they were back in the creek, but the message never came. After 1 month, I heard that some people were going to the creek to pick fruit, so I decided to go. I was afraid to cross the border, but I made it. There was nothing left in our home. Everything had been stolen. People I met told me I could not reach Al-Rama, so I went back to Lebanon and stayed for 2 years. Then I found a smuggler, Ali. And with a group, we left at night for Palestine. We were afraid. It was dangerous. Finally, at dawn, close to Al-Rama, I continued along through the fields. When I reached the village, I saw someone from the creek who took me to my family. They could not believe I had made it. Neither could I. One Christmas day, we heard that a creek had been completely destroyed. The mugger and others had gone to a hill opposite the village and confirmed the news. It was a catastrophe to hear this news. They wanted to kill any hope for us to go back, but they didn't. I eventually got a permit and started to work as a butcher in Haifa. I married in 1960 and moved to Haifa. We go back a lot to Iqrit, sleeping in the church. I was arrested a few times for staying there. We brought the children during every vacation. We are the same as refugees. What we have in common is the hope of return. We just want to go home. This is our basic right. I want to go back and build a small home. In 1951, Israel's Supreme Court issued an order that allowed all residents of the creek to go back to their village. But the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, destroyed the village except for the church, which I saw the picture for. The Palestinians of the creek still carry the keys of their houses and will return to their homes in Shalom soon.
Next up, representing Tasmir Al-Krain.
My name is Suhad Hadi. I represent the Palestinian residents of the village of Kafr Anna. The district is known as Jaffa or Yaffa in Arabic. The population is 3,248, of whom are 3,028 are Palestinians and 220 were Jews. On September 13, 1948, the village of Kafr Anna was completely defaced except for its mosque, which is still standing. It was attacked by Haganah's Operation Shamat, led by Alexandrian Brigade. It was one of the 14 villages slated for destruction by Israel Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, who asked the cabinet for formal permission. Later in the month of September 1948, Kafr Anna was mentioned as a site for Yaakov settlements designated for the new Jewish immigrants. Today, there are a few ruins left of Kafr Anna, including a small shop and some houses, but the people of Kafr Anna are denied going back to their homes. However, from the extensive archives collected from Palestinians all over the refugee camps, I do have a detailed map of Kafr Anna showing the city coordinates and limits. There is an eyewitness interview with Yusuf Ahmed al-Dini, who was also known as Abd-Elsalam, who was 16 in 1948. The interview takes place on December 22, 2004 in Amman, Jordan. We were living peacefully in our village, catering to the clan alongside the Jewish community, which sometimes we traded with. Our family lived in Kafr Anna for hundreds of years. The village was divided into different sections where different families lived. For example, Al-Nabka consisted of the families of Weir, Hamed, Sa'id, and Iqrit. Al-Nabka consisted of the families of Salah, Nafal, Al-Khalid, and Al-Sheikh. Another section of the village was Zain Street, where we used to get our drinking water from. It consisted of the families of Hassan, Al-Hussein, Dar al-Dashan, Shaheen, and Hejra. The attack that night came from the north, from the Independence area. The Jewish settlement was there for a long time. It was about 11 kilometers from our village. A night before, the unarmed civilians, including my family, fled towards the line, surrounded to seek safety between the orange groves, Beirut. And only between 50 to 60 men with guns stayed behind to defend the village. At that time, every 25 to 30 families pooled their money to buy rifles from the Jordan market in Amman. So there was approximately only 60 rifles left. But they attacked us with thousands of soldiers, as I said before, from the north. In that attack, the village lost many men, and the rest just fled away. Among the martyrs during the battle were Mohammad al-Hadi, Muhammad Ahmed, and his brother Muhammad. We stayed in the Big Dog for a few weeks, then we walked 20 kilometers to the ranches. Stayed there for a few weeks, then we moved to the village of Pekin and stayed there for a while in the school building because there was no school due to the war. Now when the school started again, they moved us out. By this time it was summer. We went to the Rizet and lived under the clear sky with only burlaps above our heads, sleeping on the straw blankets below us. There we stayed for 6 months and then it started to get cold. The UN moved us to Abd-Elsalam refugee camps and gave us one tent for the 5 of us that only fit 2 beds. But we had a good water source since the mountain had a fresh spring enough for a large crowd. The UN provided some food, then they gave my dad some powdered milk and powdered eggs. After 2 years of living at the Abd-Elsalam refugee camps, we moved to Amman, Jordan, and lived behind the Samir Rafah schools. There my dad built one room made from wood and straws and lived there for 2 years. Then we moved in 1955 to the that refugee camp until 1999. By then our situation got a lot better because we had small jobs and were able to buy more needed products and clothing. The Palestinians of Kafr Anna still carry the keys to their houses and will return to their homes soon, inshallah.
And now representing the city of Lydda, Zain Alion.
My name is Deir Yassin. Today I represent the Palestinian residents of the city of Lydda, or Lydda in Arabic. Lydda was the district of Roma, with a population of 16,780 people, of which only 20 were Jewish. On July 10, 1948, Lydda was forcibly displaced by Zionist military forces, Yifta Brigade. At 1:30 p.m., July 12, before the shooting had completely died down, Operation AACC issued the following order to Yifta Brigade. The inhabitants of Lydda must be expelled quickly without intention to age. Today, Lydda has been appropriated as an Israeli city with a population of 73,600, of whom 22,100 are Palestinians, 45,700 are Jewish, and 5,800 of other backgrounds. I do have pictures of the city from 1940s and also copies of land deeds collected from some Palestinians from Lydda. The following account was told by Uda George Rentisi as an eyewitness of the Lydda death march. He was 11 years old at the time. At 7:15 Monday morning, July 13, 1948, 3 Israeli soldiers came to our home in Lydda. I remember going to the door with my mother. I was 11 at the time. I heard the soldiers say in English, "Leave your house open and go outside." We did as we were ordered. My father, George, 49, my mother, Faika, 38, my 3 younger brothers, Elias, 8, Philip, 6, and Mahfouz, 1. My 2 sisters, Abdullah, 14, and Sonia, 3, and my 2 grandparents. We all went outside and left our home unlocked. At first, my father thought that Israelis were doing what the British had done during the 6-month strike in 1936. They had everyone leave their homes and gather at the threshing floor center in the city. Back then, the British were checking for weapons, and once they had finished, they let the people return to their homes later that day. We are Christian Palestinians, so my father thought we should wait in the compound of St. George's Church. Hundreds of people were heading in the same direction. We never made it. At a turn in the road, just before the church, Israeli soldiers directed us down a road that ended at a narrow gate that led into the mountains. By this time, the number of people had grown, and panic began to set in. Word had spread about the mosque. The Israelis had herded over 136 men into the Damish mosque, the smaller of Lydda's 2 mosques, and machine gunned them. Not one person survived. When we saw Tawfiq Abu Saud, the headmaster of one of our schools, he told us how the soldiers had come to his home and told him that he and his family had to leave in 3 minutes or they'd all be killed. And what made our fear so rational, if that's the word, was the fact that the soldiers were not forcing us onto one of the main roads where it would have been easier to walk, but onto rough, hilly terrain, littered with rocks and boulders and clumps of bleached thorn, a place where they could kill us and leave our bodies for the wildlife. By now the heat had reached 100 degrees. The scene was chaotic. Women in black abayas and heavily embroidered Palestinian dresses hysterically clutched their infants as they stumbled forward to avoid the expected spray of machine gun fire. I remember holding the hand of my paternal grandfather, Lydda Rentisi, whose name I, as Al-Nabka, was given as is our custom. In his other hand, my grandfather held our only remaining possessions, a small tin of sugar and some milk for my aunt's 2-year-old son, Isa, who was sick with typhoid. About a mile outside the city, we came to a private vegetable farm, its entrance framed by a large gate. Atop the gate sat soldiers with machine guns, firing over our heads and shouting at us to hurry through the gate. I did not know it at the time, but our death march had begun. The Palestinians of Lydda still carry the keys of their houses and will return to their homes soon, inshallah.
Once again, can I give a round of applause for all 5 of these young men? Now at this time, we would like to host a special panel discussion and Q&A session. We are honored today to welcome 2 special guest panelists who are here with us. Our first panelist is the founder and executive director of If American You, a nonprofit organization that provides information on Israel, Palestine, and U.S. connection, and president of the Council for the National Interest. Her interest in the issue began in early 2001, when she traveled alone throughout the West Bank and Gaza as a freelance journalist at the height of the Second Intifada. She writes and speaks widely on the issue, including talks at the World Affairs Councils, the National Press Club, briefings on Capitol Hill, and hundreds of U.S. campuses, including Harvard, Stanford, Yale, U.S. Berkeley, and the Naval Postgraduate Institute, Northwestern, and other venues, as well as many lectures in England, Wales, Canada, Malaysia, China, Iraq, Iran. She is the author of Against Our Better Judgment, The Hidden History of How the U.S. Was used to create Israel, an Amazon bestseller. that has sold almost 50,000 copies. Please welcome to the stage journalist Alison Weir. Our second panelist was born and raised in Al-Nabka, Northeast Jerusalem, and arrived in the United States in December 1978 as a student. With a passion for advocating Palestinian rights, they co-founded the General Union of Palestinian Students in the United States, serving as the National Vice President from 1984 to 1987. Additionally, they played a pivotal role as a co-founder and General Secretary of the Palestinian Democratic Youth Organization from 1983 to 1985. Recognized for their dedication to their community, they were elected as a member of the Palestinian National Council in 2018. They have also served as the president of the Palestinian Aid Society Detroit chapter and hold the esteemed position of founder and national president of the Palestinian American Organizations Network, a national network comprising 31 organizations. Through this network, they actively engage with the U.S. Department advocating for community affairs and addressing broader issues. They bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to our event with academic achievements including a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering Technology and a Master's degree in Management. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Muhammad Abd-Elsalam. And joining them on the stage is our moderator today, who has been a lifelong member of the Arab American Community Center and one of its board of directors. Please welcome Musa Kassis. Good evening. Can we good?
No, no, do stage. Yep. Good job, Najah.
Good evening. I know that most of us talking about the Nakba as 1948, but actually the years of the Nakba spread 1947 to 1949. At the height of it in 1948, with the most massacres and the most depopulation of the cities. Therefore, we point to the 1948, but it was extended over 3 years. During these 3 years, 102 communities were destroyed and built over by new settlements. 13 were depopulated by force and appropriated for Israeli habitation. 384 communities were depopulated in the Nakba but had not built over. And 693 communities remain standing today, which forms more than now 24% of the population of historic 1948 region that we always point to. In 1937, David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, in a private letter to his son, said verbatim, "We will expel the Arabs and take their place." In December, same person, 1947, in his diary he wrote, "In each attack, a decisive blow should be struck, resulting in the destruction of homes and the expulsion of the population." Another former Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, wrote in his memoir that in July 12, 1948, in a meeting between Rabin, Yigal Allon, general at the time, and Ben-Gurion, General Allon asked Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, what was to be done with the Palestinian population of the city of Lydda. The answer was, waving with his hand, Garish Otam. Garish Otam in Hebrew, get rid of it. That was the answer from the top of the democracy of the world, Ben Gurion. At the time, more than 15,000 Palestinians lived in Lydda. All but 1,052 were allowed to stay. Today, there are more than 22,000, as you heard from our youth, Palestinians still live in the city of Lydda. Population in historic Palestine in 1948, rather in historic Palestine as a general, is 58% as of today. So at that time, when they thought that we are depopulating this country, when the main goal was for the population that we wanted a land with no people for a people with no land, and that was the solution. Now, after 75 years, the Palestinians have stood fast. 52% is still the population, and if you look at the numbers, at 1,052 in the Lydda, now is 22. Take that number at 1.2 million Palestinians. Now we are 15 million Palestinians worldwide. And this is also another indication that we are first population, then determination, and we have been in the last 10 years achieving victories on all levels. Yet the issue has not been solved. So therefore, commemorating 75 years of the Nakba, even though we haven't got to return to our homeland yet, but we are steadfast, and therefore we have a distinguished panel. And thank you very much, Alison, for responding to our invitation and coming. I know you arrived at 11:30 at night last night, and so that was stretched, for coming that late, but thank you very much for being here tonight. And also, Mohammad Abd-Elsalam, we're happy that you're here with us today as a brother and a comrade. And with that, I would allow now for our panelists, for each to speak about 10 minutes as an introductory. Then we have questions to the panel to ask them, and then we open the floor not only for your question and answer, but also for comments. I know that many of you sitting here tonight are from the 1948 area depopulated. So I would like each one of you to stand up and say, I'm from this city, and we moved or we migrated to a certain location, and then after that, where you at now, and the family, your town, where it's at around the world. So with that, we'll come to an end. Who would like to start?
Dr. Hadi, board members of the Arab American Community Center, and members of the Community Center, thank you very much for allowing me and inviting me to be with you tonight, commemorating the 75th anniversary of Al-Nabka. I'm actually pleased and happy to be with you again in this center. When the first time I came in to Youngstown in 1980, to celebrate one of the anniversaries of one of our Palestinian resistance groups, when other NAB used to be just like half at that time. Of course. So I'm glad that this NAB expanded. I'm I'm assuming because the community had also expanded, and the figure of those days is to be about 500-600 people. Hopefully this time, with the new generation, it will be, I think it's bigger and larger. To speak about the Nakba, in my opinion, the Nakba, it did not start in 1948. The Nakba still continues till now. And the Nakba started way back in the 1900s, in the beginning of the century, in 1900s, when the first ethnic cleansing happened to the Palestinians around Jaffa, when they forced the Palestinians, the east side or northeast side of Jaffa, to make room for a Jewish settlement today called Tel Aviv. That's the first time Palestinians were cleansed under the auspices of the mandate Britain in I believe in 1919 or 1920. So to give a background, the Zionist movement first convention in 1897, they decided at that time they need to have a Jewish state. They want to solve the Jewish state, the Jewish problem in Europe by creating a state where Jews can move from Europe and elsewhere to it, so they can resolve the issue for those Jews in Europe at that time. So they decided, even though they had options, either in Africa or in Argentina or what have you, they decided on Palestine because Palestine had biblical links to Jews, and it would be easy for them to have Jews migrate from Europe to Palestine. And they got a goal, and this is really interesting. They got a goal to create that state within 50 years. The state was created in 1948, exactly after 50 years. That Basel Convention, first convention, happened in 1897. So 50 years later on, that state was achieved. It was achieved by whatever means, by money, by hook or crook. The Jewish agency helped Britain and France in World War I, helped the United States get into the war in the First World War and the Second World War and what have you, to gain all these work, so to accomplish their state. During World War I, while the Jewish agency working on building a state or getting powers together, there was something called Sykes-Picot. I don't know if many of you heard about that. Sykes-Picot was an agreement between England and France that they will divide the Ottoman Empire once it's defeated in the war between France and England. And if you look at the map, it was just Sykes, Mark Sykes, a diplomat from England. He just sat down and looked at the map and he said, lines like this. And he created that Middle East. He divided the Middle East into what we have right now: Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, and what have you. Those were not created because we have the Ottoman Empire at that time, all one country. Even though they promised the Arab, if you get with us, get rid of the Turks, okay, we are going to give you an Arabic independent state within this area and that region. And in secret, they had the plan to actually take it over. Here comes the fourth declaration in 1917, November 2nd, 1917. The Jewish agencies and the Zionist movement kept pushing England to fulfill their promise to give Jews a foot in Palestine. So Balfour declared that His Majesty will give Palestine to the Jews to create a Jewish state. So you give something that's not yours to somebody who doesn't deserve it. So the war ended, migration started to Palestine slowly, and those migrations to Palestine slowly, and then when the rise of Hitler came in power in 1933, there are a lot of evidence suggesting that the Zionist movement in Europe worked with Hitler to force those Jews to leave Europe to Palestine. That's why in the 30s, the migration, the Jewish migration to Palestine, intensified. But in the beginning it was, a few thousand here, few thousand there, and what have you, and in the 30s they intensified. And by the World War II, there are evidence saying that Britain, while its mandate in Palestine, they trained 30,000 Jews from those who are in Palestine to join the military in Britain. And when the war was over, all these soldiers, they returned prepared as soldiers to Palestine. So to prepare for a state, they are going to take over with the secret, Britain held at that time when they decided in 1947 they wanted to leave Palestine. And that's why, if you remember, and probably you read, immediately in 1948, on May 14, 1948, on the declaration of the State of Israel, Israel had the government, had housing, had an army, and all that army, they joined all their terrorist organizations led by Menachem Begin, who became Prime Minister, Shamir, who became Prime Minister, Peres, who became the President of the state, and all these terrorist organizations became the military, now what they call IDF. So, the massacres that our youth just spoke about, those continued actually after 1948. And the biggest one of them in 1956, on October 29, 1956, happened in Kafr Anna. People are returning from work. The soldiers, they stopped that bus, cut people down, and they shot 43 people right on the street. They them down and shot them all. That massacre continued. Military occupation of the Palestinian in 1948 remained since from 1948 to 1952. People who remained in Palestine, they were under actually military rule. So those now became almost 2 million people. And the Israelis, they cannot control the expansion of Palestinians. We have high birth rates. Massacres also continued after 1948. In 1967 war, the Israelis have a massacre around Lapron, Jerusalem. They cleansed 3 cities. They destroyed all these 3 cities. Bet Nuba, U'Amwas, Weir, those towns in that area, they used to belong to the Lydda and Ramla, the sense of Lydda and Ramla, districts. They were occupied in 1948. They became part of Jerusalem. And in 1967, the Israeli walked in, they just wiped out the 3 cities. Complete. The 1982 massacre of Sabra and Shatila happened in Lebanon. That's also to get rid of Palestinians. Over 3,000 Palestinians were killed in Sabra and Shatila. And as of this morning, on the news, the Israeli took over 25% of the Armenian quarter in Jerusalem by force, forcing all these Palestinian Armenians, okay, to flee their homes, okay, and live somewhere else. This morning, today. So this ethnic cleansing did not stop. And in my opinion, it's not going to stop till this state called Israel, okay, is gone. Because they established their state based on cleansing the Palestinians. They still think that we don't exist. As Musa mentioned, we have 15 million Palestinians throughout the world, and they still say we don't have any Palestinians to talk to. زي النعام عبد الراسخ الرمل ومشاكل هذه مش معقول. So, quickly to say that all that ethnic cleansing remains في النقب still in 1948, النقب is 1948, but they're still moving people around at the bit more settlements النقب. في الغور Jordan River. They moved out, they cleaned out 60,000 Palestinians. Okay? That war used to have 125,000 inhabitants. Now it has only 60,000 left in it. Because they moved out from Riha, from Khan Ahmar to build settlements and what have you, what have you. So this is continuous. So this is the Nakba on daily basis. The Nakba did not stop. It did not stop from 1919 till now. Okay? And in my opinion, it's going to continue, okay, until we find a solution, okay, to this problem, okay, in Palestine. And the solution will be, okay, free Palestine of occupation of all these, evils that are happening against us. And if whatever remains from the Jews in Palestine, okay, they will live with us in peace and harmony, and if they don't want to live with us, okay, they have a second passport. They all have second passports. Okay, they can go wherever they came from. Okay? And I'm sorry to say that, okay, I'm one of the advocates, before for a two-state solution, to have a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza, but every time you go that, you cannot see any evidence that state solution, okay, is a viable solution. Therefore, we have to find one democratic state that all of us have to live there, and whoever wants to live from them, from all these Israelis who wants to stay, welcome, under the auspices of the Palestinian state, not an Israeli Zionist state. Okay? And those who wants to leave, God bless them. And I will stop here, and I'm sure Musa have some questions. Okay, we can expand on further. So, thank you.
Can you hear me all right? Is my mouth in the right place? Yes. I'm honored to be here today. Hearing those stories were so moving. I'm sure for you, but for me, it's hard not to cry.
We need it to be louder.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. I don't have a loud voice, Norman, so tell me, thank you. Tell me when you need to hear more.
Put that closer to it.
Okay, I'll try this one. Is this better?
A little better.
I think that what Israel has done is one of the great atrocities of history. I can't think of many things that are much worse. There have been, I'm sad to say, many Holocausts throughout history. African slavery, American indigenous peoples. But this was such an intentional Holocaust that, as we just heard, has gone on and on and on while the world has stood by and let it happen. It's a shame. It's a shame on the whole world, every country, every person. And on
very typical. That's the thing to remember. Zionists have succeeded in making sure that most Americans don't know what happened. It's not in the news. It's not in our history books. When we do hear something in the news, it's very Israeli-centric. So most people have no idea what's been going on all this time. My story is that in 2000, in the fall of 2000, when the second Intifada started, my youngest son had just started college. So all of my children were out of the home. And as parents know, that's a time of change. Suddenly there were no children to take care of. And right at that time, the Intifada started, and it was in the news a little bit. I was a local journalist, but not writing about international relations. But I thought, what is Israel-Palestine about? Why are children throwing stones against tanks? So I decided to pay attention to the news coverage just to learn about what it was. And when I did that, I pretty quickly noticed as a journalist that I was hearing one side of the story. I was sympathetic to Israel, but I was hearing always from and about Israelis and not about Palestinians, not all Palestinians. So I started trying to look into it more. Google and the internet had just become available to us. So I started searching on the internet. And I discovered news reports from the region, from Palestinians, from aid organizations. And I started learning about children being shot every day. Unarmed protesters being shot every day. None of this was being reported in newspapers, in NPR or New York Times. So after work, I kept reading more and more. And finally, after a few months, I thought this was the most massive cover-up I had ever seen in my life. And I'm saying, wow. So I quit my job in California, and I traveled over to Palestine, to the West Bank and Gaza, by myself as a freelance reporter. I took my notebook and a small camera and saw what was going on. In Gaza, I went to Khan Yunis, to Rafah, to Gaza City, Al-Nabka. I saw children who had been shot in the head, in the chest, and often in the back, because they were running away. I saw homes that had been destroyed. I remember talking to a woman when she heard I was an American journalist who said to me, "Tell Americans what's going on." And I told her I would try. And now, 23 years later, I'm still trying. So when I came back from that trip, I determined to tell every American I possibly could the real facts about Palestine. I started this nonprofit organization. It's not ideological. It's not political. It's just to tell people the facts of the history and what's going on now, and about the Israel lobby in this country that runs so much of our country. That here I grew up here, my parents grew up here, most of my grandparents grew up here. None of us even knew what Zionism was. I don't think I even heard the word Zionist. So when I began to look into it, I also began to read book after book after book. And I discovered that Zionism began in the United States long before my grandparents, or long before my parents were born. That it began in the late 1800s, the same time as the Basel Convention, Americans. By 1910, there were Zionist organizations in the major cities of the United States. By 1920, there were something like 200,000 Zionists in this country. And what happened is that they were already becoming a significant factor in America, in major cities, that politicians were already listening to Zionists by 1910. And then something very important happened. A very famous Supreme Court justice named Louis Brandeis became a Zionist. In fact, he became the head of World Zionism. World Zionism transferred from Europe to the United States, to Boston. 2 years later, he was appointed to the Supreme Court by Woodrow Wilson. And when he was in the Supreme Court, you're supposed to resign your board memberships, your affiliations, etc. So he pretended to. But he continued. This is in, if you read my book, you will see it is literally half citations. There's something like 200 footnotes. While he was in the Supreme Court chambers, his loyal lieutenants would come into the city to meet with him, and he would give them directives to go and to carry out. Felix Frankfurter, another very famous Supreme Court justice, was also doing the same thing several years later. The Balfour Declaration, my book is about the American connection. So I was astounded at the things I discovered. For example, Jewish Historical Quarterly, a reputable, respected scholarly journal that's in many university libraries, had an article a number of years ago called The Parachute. It was about a secret Zionist society that operated in the United States, of which Louis Brandeis was one of the leaders, was a major leader. Now this isn't some anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. This is from a scholarly Jewish historical quarterly. So then I looked into, well, who was the author? Was this some anti-Semite that snuck in, the way they always say? She was and is an Israeli historian from a major Israeli university. In fact, she wrote a book that tells about that. What's significant about, so they had this secret society in which new members would be recruited, especially from Harvard, because that's where Brandeis was very connected. He was in Boston. And they would go around spreading Zionism to people of importance and planting this idea. When they recruited new people, they would swear an oath saying that they would be devoted to the Zionist agenda above family and country. This is all coming from another person that wrote about it is Peter Gross, who was a New York Times diplomatic correspondent. He also writes about that. I would not have imagined such a thing. Then, what turns out to be even more significant is that in 1915, another leader of the parachute, Horace Cowan, who was a professor at that time at the University of Wisconsin. Previously, he had been in Princeton. Horace Cowan came up with the idea that he conveyed to the Zionists in England that England, what was important is that England needed to declare support for a Jewish state in Palestine. This was proposed in 1915. 2 years later, we got the Balfour Declaration. The way they got the Balfour Declaration is that Chaim Weizmann, who was the Zionist leader in Britain, went to the British government. The Rothschilds had even talked about this in the 60s. He went to the British leadership and said, what's important to remember is what was going on in 1915 and then continued in 1916. The Great War. There was a massive carnage, World War I. 60,000 British soldiers were killed in the first day of the battle, some 60,000. So they were losing the war, or at least they didn't know if they were going to lose it. They were desperate for the U.S. to join the war on their side. The American population did not want to join World War I because it was in Europe and had nothing to do with the United States. We didn't have any alliances connecting us. So Woodrow Wilson was elected to his second term of office with the slogan, he kept us out of the war. The Americans were not going to go and join that war. But the British Zionists, Chaim Weizmann, went to the British government and said, we can get the U.S. to enter the war on the side of Britain. We will do that if you promise to then facilitate our move to have a Jewish state in Palestine. Because the war was against not just Germany, it was against the Ottoman Empire. So if they defeated the Ottoman Empire, then they could dismantle Palestine. So he told the British that his close friend, the Zionist leader in the United States, Louis Brandeis, was very close to Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson would then support having U.S. troops go over and die, like my great uncles did, in a war that had nothing to do with the United States. This is written about in a number of books that are out of print, fairly exciting, that this is the British, some top British officials feel that this is why the U.S. joined World War I. I don't know. But British officials said they made us a promise and they kept it. Zionist leaders also claimed that they were the reason that the U.S. entered World War I. They wrote about this later. So that's also one thing about the Balfour Declaration. It was not written by Lord Balfour. It was written by a man, a Zionist, a secret Zionist. This comes from Jewish scholarly sources. Named Leopold Amory, who basically wrote it, but he conferred with Brandeis. So drafts of the Balfour Declaration went back and forth between England and the United States before they came up with the final draft, and then was signed by Lord Balfour, and was given a lot of Americans and almost Americans don't include this anyway, but it was given to Lord Rothschild, who was the head of Zionism in Britain. So there's so much more to this, and there's such an American connection. So my book, as the general says, the book is how the United States was used to create Israel, because the Balfour Declaration opened the door to what came next. I feel that we can bring a change to this. When I began working on this issue in early 2001 after my trip, I thought this is so obviously wrong, so obviously bad for the United States. We give Israel over $10 million per day it causes hostility against Americans because of Israel. I thought, this will be fixed in 10 years. That's what I thought 10 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much for wonderful information. And this will lead to my first question to both of you, and to address it from a different perspective. One from United States side, and one the impact and effect of it on the Palestinian side. So the question is, I know that you started and to mention that, the question is how much money does the U.S. expend on Israel and why? That's number one. And the question to you, Muhammad, which is related to this one, that the Palestinians really were disposed from their land. They lost their homes, they lost their land, they lost their livelihood, as you heard about the people from Kafr Anna that moving from one city to another, end of the refugee camp in Jordan. So what is the economic impact that the Nakba had on the Palestinian people? So we'll start with Alison.
The amount of money to Israel is we have given, our tax money. The U.S. government has given more money to... I can't hear you.
Everyone has to go
The
louder.
U.S. has given more money to tiny Israel, very small country, more money than we've given to all the starving countries in Africa put together. This has been going on for decades and decades, and most people don't know. It's right now officially $10.5 million per day. $10.5 million per day. And that's just the obvious part. If you look through the budget carefully, you'll find another $500 million here, another $20 million here. Then on top of it, so let's just round it up to like $10.5 million per year. But then, as many of you know, the average person doesn't. The reason that
finally normalized relations with Israel was because they made an arrangement, and let's work this out, where the U.S. would give Egypt lots of money every year. So now we give Egypt about $3 billion. $3 billion. We give Jordan another about $2 billion. When you ask, I did a long investigation into this. So it comes more, it's over $10 million to Israel, and another $10 million of our tax money, all these people who are working hard, trying to struggle to take care of their children, go to college. It's another $10 million for Israel, so it's really $20 million a year, at least, that Israel's costing us. And I'll just give a little bit of information to you guys. It's the President's request for 2022 encompasses approximately 53% of total U.S. foreign military financing worldwide. And the reason we do that is because of the Israel line. I'm glad to go into more of that later, but I can detail it's the Israel line. That's why.
And Robert, we should add to Alison numbers, over $1 billion a year goes from the Jewish conference in the United States to Israel, but that is not accounted for. Yeah, that comes from our economy, but they are tax-free.
Assume you have no speakers. We are not hearing anything.
Yeah, no, Michael. Yeah.
No speakers, better.
Use that.
One piece of good news is that I think this is being recorded, and if it is, it will be on YouTube later, and hopefully you can turn up the volume. So I apologize that it's so difficult now, but I hope that eventually you can
sound better.
Yeah, your bite is better. Thank you.
Is this mic better?
No.
No.
Bit up.
Yeah. It's a lot of noise.
Raise your voice, better.
Can I speak without?
It's so real loud.
I have a loud voice all the time, so my daughter at home always fighting with me. Put it down. I'm sorry. Well, for the question of the economic impact that the Nakba had, probably we should go back a little bit before the Nakba. The Palestinian economy before 1948 was in general an agricultural economy, because most of Palestine used to be poor, fallahin. So they plant, they eat, and they sell whatever they can in order for them to get some money to buy other stuff other than food. There were a little industry in Palestine, mainly Sabuna in Nablus, and other cities in Palestine, because of the olive oil that we have, we produce. So we have too much oil, and they end up having to do soap. We have some wood industry in Palestine for windows, doors, those days, for homes, building homes, or what have you. The estimates for the Palestinian economy in general, prior to 1948, it was $300 million a year, annually. That did not account for the Jewish economy at those days, because it used to be secret. Okay, they never declared any money, and the British, they never asked for. So the British used to tax us and overtax the Palestinians in order for them to compensate for whatever occupation that they have, I'm talking about the British around, and to feed them. So the impact of 1948 on the Palestinians, when the Palestinians had to leave, we're talking about 750,000 Palestinians, they left the country. Now there's devastation. There's nobody to plant. Land is it's not there anymore. Okay, for them. People are in camps, and camps they don't have anything they can plant or do. So the Palestinians in 1948 through 1960s, especially those in camps, they start relying on education. People used to send their kids to school, and I don't know if anybody old enough to remember what they call Dar Muallimin. Okay, so you send your high school kid to Dar Muallimin for 2 years, and all of a sudden he becomes a teacher. This teacher will go على الخليج. And thanks to all those in دول الخليج اليوم, they don't appreciate what the Palestinians did for them, because we built those countries. Okay, education, and the engineers, Palestinian did, okay, and the pilots, and what have you, and the builders. The Khalid, دولة السعودية was founded in 1931.
34.
Huh?
34.
تعتقد in 1930s. إحنا in 1930s we used to have an airport in there. Okay, and we used to have Mercedes in there. We used to have exports. All of the exports من يافا على Germany, and we used to bring Mercedes, okay, instead. So it's changed. So دول الخليج does not exist. دولة زي الإمارات اليوم, it has that relationship with Israel. It is يعني pathetic the way the EU having that relation with Israel, as if they are in cahoon together. That country was founded in 1971. In 1971, the Palestinians had a 96% education rate. Therefore, these teachers who went to Khalid and up to build, it became the source of income for the majority of the Palestinians and the camps. Now, don't forget, we have 58 camps for these Palestinians. 28 of them are in the West Bank and Gaza. And that's where the devastation happened in Gaza. Okay? Everybody concentrated in the same area. It's a very small area, but you talk about 300 square miles. And there are no resources for Gaza. Okay, it's a desert, except the sea and fish. In the Kafr Anna, it's the same thing. And we are a mountainous country, but when you have all these camps and all these people, the unemployment was so high. And I remember in 1966, the Jordanians built the first camp, camp Shafat, if you hear about it on the news. But هذا المخيم is built على أراضي بلدنا and أراضي شفاط. It was built before 1967, before the refugees came, okay, in 1967. They anticipated, okay, the cleansing from Yalo and Amwas and others, okay, to come. So they built a camp for them before even they come, okay. And this camp right now is probably 250,000 people. And that is becoming, like a fork in the mouth of the Israelis, because they give them Israeli citizenship, Awit and now they have to feed them, they have to take care of them, health care and what have you. And it becomes a burden on the Israelis. They don't want them. And that's why all these intifada, all these killings, and what have all these Palestinians and who are revolting against the Israelis. So it's devastation, okay, that Nakba happened on the Palestinians. So,
Come by, Alison. Just don't talk yet, just like this.
My voice isn't as loud as this one.
Yeah.
I'll try to talk loudly and use that one.
Could you hear?
Just to...
Hello?
Yeah.
Keep doing that.
Just to add to that amazing information is that going back to the time of the Nakba, the number of refugees reads at least 3/4 as we know. So U.S. diplomats in Cairo and Amman described a disastrous situation in which the almost non-existent resources of those countries were stretched nearly to the breaking point. Because at that point, as we know, these weren't independent countries. They were under the British Empire. The State Department reported that during the last 9 months of 1948, Arab states had donated $11 million to refugee aid. And the State Department even said, this sum, in light of the very slender budgets of most of these governments, is relatively enormous. Israel, on the other hand, donated 500 cases of oranges. Meanwhile, Israel had acquired formerly Palestinian-owned properties worth at least $480 million in 1947 dollars, which is the equivalent of $5.2 trillion. So when Israel claims, oh, we were so successful, they got over $5 trillion worth of property from Palestinians.
Very good. Next question, and this will address to both of you. How can we end the ongoing Nakba? That's one thing. And the related question to it is the two-state solution is still a viable option?
My feeling when I saw this and learned what was going on, and you know, it's like you look at a map and you sort of see how to get somewhere. You look at whether there's a desert in the mountain and the roads closed, how do you get somewhere? And it seemed to me that when I learned what I learned, my goal was to end it. So I tried to find out, figure out how to end it. I thought, okay, Palestinians in the occupied territories have tried everything from nonviolent resistance, violent resistance, against the massive power of Israel. They can't win, it seemed to me. No matter how brave, courageous, or dedicated, Israel is massively powerful. They just kill people whenever they want. You know, attacking Gaza is like shooting fish in a barrel. And they do it year after year. So there is a peace movement in Israel. There are some Israeli soldiers who won't serve in the occupying forces. So there is a movement there trying to change the Israeli government, but it's too weak. It's very weak. It's not going to succeed. I don't. I'm just looking realistically, not what I want, but the way it looks to me. And especially the peace movement in Israel. Why would anybody give up anything when they get a blank check from the United States? So basically, the militarists and the Zionist government in Israel goes, we don't have to do anything because no matter what we do, we can bomb a U.S. Navy ship, try to sink it, kill 34 American servicemen, injure 170, and we get more money the next year. So why would they ever stop? Why would Israel ever stop? So it seemed to me the only way to end it, Israel is propped up by the United States, by my tax money and by my government that vetoes UN Security Council resolutions and is the dominant power in the world today. Whether or not we like that, that's the case. Luckily, we are a democracy, very flawed. We are, however, we do vote for our elected representatives. The people that ultimately set our policy are Congress, especially Congress and the President. We vote for those people. When Americans know what I know, I would never vote for somebody that's going to give money to Israel. So, to me, the way to change it, which seems enormous, but this is a very changeable country. I'm 1 year older than the Nakba. In my lifetime, I've seen major changes in this country that nobody expected would happen. I feel this can happen despite the fact there's a very powerful, very rich lobby that permeates the media, Hollywood, etc., and in every city practically. I still feel we can do this the way, I feel the way this can end is in every community there are events where we inform the American public how much of their money goes to Israel, right away that gets their attention. Most people are too busy. They think Israel, Palestine, it's far away, it's confusing, I have to go to work and I want to watch some football this weekend. But if they hear, wait, $10 million a day of your money is going to this tiny country that tried to sink the U.S. Navy ship and then lied about it. And then they learn about the atrocities that are committed to all these years. Once they learn that information, people change their views and will start voting on that. So to me, that's the way. That's why I started If Americans Knew.
In my opinion, how to end the Nakba has probably two thoughts. One, it will be internal. It will be Palestinian, Arabic, regional effort and international effort. And the other one is the United States in particular and the rest of the world. On the first one, we as Palestinians have to be united. We have to have one voice, like when the PLO in the 70s was speaking on behalf of the all Palestinians. At that time, we gained all the respect and all the support of the world at that time. Nowadays, we have two Palestinian authorities, one in the West Bank and one in Gaza. Both leadership in both in Gaza and West Bank, in Gaza and West Bank, yes. They are comfortable on the situation because to them, none of them is obligated to the other side. It's an obligation. Hamas and Gaza, okay, all they have to do is take care of people in Gaza. They have no obligation whatsoever on West Bank to the people. And the vice versa. The Sultan of al-Gharbiyya is the same thing, it's comfortable. Imagine what they call a president, Palestinian president, never visited Gaza since 2005. Gaza since 2005 had 6 wars. Doesn't care. So if you speak on behalf of the Palestinians, when you come to the United Nations begging to be protected like animals, excuse my French, go al Gaza. Gaza have a war at the same time while you are in the UN. Okay? Did not say one word in the UN about it. I listened to the whole speech that he has. How can we look the eye on the Russians, the Americans, and whoever, okay, and say we need your support if we cannot unite ourselves? Second thing, we have to push in the United Nations and elsewhere for haqq al-awd, the right of return to the Palestinians. Those refugees have the right to return based on the UN Resolution 194 that all countries signed on it, including the United States of America. Why Israel invented the right of return to the Jews in 1951, that any Jewish person around the world can come to Israel, live anywhere he wants, okay, and when they come to the airport, they give him money, go live in a settlement, okay, except the Ethiopian Jews, because they don't believe they are Jews, okay, and because they are black, on top of it. This is a racist country. They bring him in to use him, and after they bring him in, they start discriminating against him. This is how the mentality of Zionism is. Okay. The second part of the question is the solution, the two-state solution viable? No, it's not. It's not viable. It's not viable, not because us, the Palestinians, they don't want it. The Palestinians actually signed off on it in Oslo behind the Palestinian back. Okay, there will be a state, supposedly, Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza within 5 years. And that's why Arafat and Barak, at the time, and Camp David, when Clinton was president at the time, he disagreed, okay? Because they want to give him the West Bank and Gaza, and excluding Jerusalem. And Abu Ammar, his people said, no, I'm not going to take anything without Jerusalem, because I cannot face my people. At least at that time, he was brave enough to do that. Nowadays, at those days in 1998, we had like 46 or 47 settlements in the West Bank. We have less than 100,000 Jews living in those settlements. Nowadays, we talk about, we have 229 settlements in the West Bank. They grew actually from 1993 to now. Okay, during Oslo, that's supposed to be peace. And you have almost 800,000 settlers. And so how can you, and if you go to the West Bank and you see roads are for Jews, roads are for Arabs. The wall divides a city, okay, or town, that if you want to go and visit your cousin on the other side, you have probably to go all the way to the other side, okay, get a permit from the Israelis even to go to the other side of Beit Hanina these days, because they put the wall in the middle of the street going from Allah ala al-Quds. In order for you to go the other side of Beit Hanina, from Ram, on the other side, or Beit Hanina to the other side, from east to west side, you have to go al Arafat to get the permit, and you have to walk in the checkpoint, which is an international checkpoint, to Colombia, to get into the other side. It's amazing. In my hometown, okay, there are the wall that they built behind my school, it's only 4 feet away from the school. You cannot see the sun. It is 30 feet high, okay? 10 meter ارتفاع السور. No, it's not viable. So the only solution left for us at this time, and I believe that there will be one state solution for all, and for all people to live together. There's no other solution. One way or another, we have to find a solution to live together. In my opinion, that day will come when the Zionist and the Jewish conference in the United States, or a Jewish, organization for the United States, Federation. Sorry? The Federation. When they become and realize that Israel becomes, okay, a heavy load to carry, and with that internal issues that they have right now, then they can go to the White House to tell that president, whoever that president is, do something, get him out to West Bank. It's not for the sake of the Palestinians, it's for the sake of having Israel, save Israel from itself. Okay? That's the time when those people will go to the White House. When somebody like Joe Biden stands, hey, he's very happy, he's a Zionist. And I believe Joe Biden doesn't understand what Zionism means.
Yeah, sure. Closing remarks, 3 minutes for each, and then we'll close up.
Just
Yeah.
to add to that, I forgot one of the things I was going to mention was that when Zionism began and they had those first conferences in Basel in 1897, then the next year, and the next year, and the next year. This was a small fraction of the Jewish population of the world. It was a very extremist, fringe population. Most Jews around the world, and in Palestine itself, and in the United States, were not Zionists. They said that, we live in America, this is where we want to live, we don't want to go live in the Middle East, we're not Zionists. They said the same thing in Britain. The people, the Jews in Palestine didn't want these Zionists coming and interfering with, they were fine. So, they claimed, like Theodore Herzl said, it's so anti-Semitic that we have to have this place in Palestine. But the vast majority of Jews around the world said, no, it's not. We're not joining your movement. So for many decades, they didn't join the movement. So I think now, many were propagandized, it's changed quite a bit. But as they see how bad it is in Israel, that Americans are opposing Israel, I think that population will also speak out. And it's starting to speak out. Many are starting to speak out.
Well, and I thought there would be questions and answers. I don't know if anybody has a question, they have to answer.
Question or comments are welcome. So if anybody interested in have any question or comment, so please. Yes, Werner, our friend.
Thank you for your historical background, but I'd like to focus on the present. I think it's clear to everyone that because things are as they are, they cannot remain as they are. You have an extreme right-wing government in Israel, actually fascist in person. You have a deeply divided Israel right now, which is somewhat of a novelty. And you have a united Palestine, especially in light of the vicious attacks upon Gaza from Israel. So you have these two forces that have reached the irreconcilable situation. I feel there must be a boiling point coming soon that will lead to a qualitative change. What is your opinion upon what will happen as a result of this enormous power gap between the asymmetrical forces of Palestine that are united and the fascist forces of Israel that are united?
Well, the extreme forces in Israel right now were elected recently. And the difference between Netanyahu and his camp and Balad and his camp is not much towards the Palestinians. The difference between them is the way they want to present themselves. Netanyahu is very blunt, and he has been very blunt since he has been in power for the last 15 years or so. And normally when Israel has its issues, internal issues, what they do is they export those problems, they go outside and start a war. And that's why poor Gaza, every time there is a dilemma within Israel, there is a difference within Israel. Gaza can be, Lebanon used to be. Hezbollah today, he can't stop. Hezbollah since 2006 forbidden Israel from, even one bullet goes to Lebanon. Because they beat them up twice. We didn't have that capability in Gaza and the West Bank. What's happening right now in Israel, it's going to keep the forces in Palestine going also to the extreme. And the extreme, I don't mean what the American media call it extreme. Terrorism and what have you. Extreme means that they are going to unite and find a way to have a third intifada, to have a weaponized intifada, and to have daily killings. And Palestinians are fed up because of their leadership in the West Bank right now. And they cannot do anything about it. But, and I think everybody is waiting for Abbas to die. So if he dies, most likely we are going to have an internal fight for a while. The rest, the new leadership is going to emerge where it will be, hopefully, much better than the one that we have right now. Where we can unite Dafa Gharbiyya and Gaza. So if we have a war, at least we can combine forces against Israel.
May I make a comment on this? Okay. Just one thing, and I think, Werner, your point is very valid on this regard, and I know I'm not a panelist, but I thought I just give you my opinion about this in particular. So if we look at the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years, we have a new phenomenon happening in the Middle East, which what we call the axis of resistance. And that axis of resistance, which started in 2006 by first in 2000 kicking Israel out of Lebanon. And that was the first time that any power in the Middle East beat Israel militarily. Not in a sense that beat him to a point that liberating Palestine, but at least they liberated part of Lebanon that was occupied for 22 years in Lebanon. That's number one. Number two, the surrounding countries, and that is from Iran to Iraq to Syria, that stood fast for 12 years against 85 countries, with all these ISIS that bringing to attack the Syrian government or Syrian people, and also the Hezbollah and the Palestinian in Gaza. So that is one side, a positive, that have achieved diplomatic, political, and military victories, even though small, but in a way they are piling up towards that moment, which is the boiling moment that we're talking about. That's number one. And number two. And then and this is our weakest point as a Palestinian, that we still have the Palestinian Authority. So we have two authorities in one, and that is historically done. And if we look at the history of the Middle East, since 1870, when the Khedive Ismail in Egypt was in power, there was two countries doing the same thing, which is France and Britain, doing the same thing that we and the countries around us doing for the Palestinian Authority, from Israel, United States, and other Arab countries supporting the authorities over the authorities of Palestine. So I think that struggle, moving positively but slowly towards that, overcome that power, and I hope we reach that moment, and I believe that it will very soon.
I think also it's important to realize in the 20-some years that I've worked on this issue, I have seen a great deal of change in this country. Many, when I first started, a little group of us put on an event in Marin County in California. And we wanted to put up flyers in store windows about our event. But we didn't feel we could even say the word Palestine, because people wouldn't put up the flyers. We had to say, how do we achieve peace in the Middle East? Now, among progressive communities, among liberals, it's becoming more and more common to support the Palestinian movement and to learn about it. That's a major change than when I first started on this. So there's been a great deal of growth. And often when I meet people who are not Arab or Palestinian or Muslim, I will ask them, how did you start working on this issue? And often they tell me it's because I had a coworker who told me he was Palestinian and told me about it. I had a classmate who told me about Palestine. I had a neighbor who told me about Palestine. So everything that each one of you does to tell other people about it, if you're students and you put on something at your college or at your high school to educate people, that's going on all over the country. I spoke in Alaska, a number of cities in Alaska. There's a group called Alaskans for Palestine. This is going on all over the country, so it seems small, but it's like when you throw pebbles. Say there's a big pond, and you throw pebbles, tiny little pebbles, on the pond. There are all these splashes, and all those circles go out more and more, and they fill the pond. So all of what everybody does in your community in Youngstown, people are doing in the communities all over this country. Everything that you do gets magnified. I think that's very powerful.
And Muhammad, Abd-Elsalam, if you talk about the organization and that, please.
Thank you, Alison.
Close it up, please.
Yes, I need actually to break up 3 points. One, to build up on what Alison started, that there is a tide changing in the United States. And this tide happened or started actually when Obama, the first time he ran for office, ran for president. And we all, Palestinians and progressives and the United States, we thought that Obama is going to be not necessarily the savior, but at least he would be part of the changing that we were hoping for. That's why his headline was change, right? We were disappointed because during the Obama era for 2 times, terms, he filled all his offices, with Zionists. So we could not do anything about it. Now, during the Sanders, the two-time Sanders ran for office, the narrative changed because the majority of his supporters in the United States were young, youth. They were students, okay? And that's where Students for Justice in Palestine was built, the Jewish Voice for Peace was built, and others, okay, who now, they are not afraid of talking about Palestine. So we have a lot of support for Palestine, and it's changed. According to the last few surveys, there are 44% of young Democrats in the United States. They support the Palestinian state, which is huge in the United States at this time. The other point I need to make, that we Palestinians in the United States, we need to unite. And I am proud to chair this Palestinian American organization network, that we have 31 organizations around the United States. And you'll name the Arab American Community Center in Youngstown is one of them, it's a member. And we welcome you, with open arms. We as organizations, we need to work together to change the narrative in the United States where we are, whether in Youngstown or in Detroit and other places. This year, Nakba was huge in certain areas, and it wasn't. But there were two significant events happened this year worth mentioning. One, the one that Rashida Tlaib did in Congress. I don't know if you heard about it or not. Rashida, she reserved a hall in the halls of the House of Representatives. And Zionist McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, override that, and he took over that hall. And thanks to Senator Sanders, when he heard that McCarthy canceled that event, he reserved actually a hall in the Senate chamber, and the event went on. And this is historic. If that continues, we are going to get also into other doors, okay, with other people when Congress. The second event was in the United Nations this year. The United Nations General Assembly last year on November 30th declared that the Nakba is an event will be commemorated in the United Nations offices around the world. And it happened this year, last Monday, okay, in the United Nations it took place. It was a nice event. The diplomats and people from the communities and others celebrated that, and hopefully that will continue. My last thing I need to talk about is our advocacy here in the United States. I am very proud to say that we, as an organization, we have played a role in the release of our beloved comrade Jamal al-Nisr. Those who don't know Jamal al-Nisr is a member of this community in Youngstown for many, many, many years. He returned to Palestine in 1998, and he had a Weir. And recently, last year, in August, Jamal al-Nisr was arrested by the Israelis with no charge under administrative detention. He served 4 months, and they renewed those 4 months. Again, they were supposed to end in April 22nd. I get a call from Fatma in Hakam, and she said, if there's anything we can do as an organization, okay, for Jamal, who's still at the time in jail, who's diabetic, 76 years old, and he barely can see, he has issues. So I said, no problem, he's one of us, why not, we can try. We formed a coalition with AACC, Ramallah Federation, and an organization called Dawn for Democracy in the Middle East. Khashoggi founded that. And those people, they have connections in the State Department. We put a statement together, And that statement, we published it to other organizations. We have 42 organizations, Americans and Jewish organizations, the Palestinian Americans, and what have you. We send it to the State Department. Also, we met with Dave Joyce, his congressman in Warren area. And we met also with Senator Brown, Jared Brown, one of their senators. And they all helped us send a letter to the State Department to push them to speak to the Israelis to release Jamal. Proudly, Jamal was released on the 19th of April. للتبعيد. We still have work to do. The Israelis are allowing Jamal to come home, to come to Youngstown, but they're refusing to allow him to come back to Palestine. They want him to self-deport. I spoke to Jamal twice, and he said, I would rather die for Palestine, even though I need to see, by doctors, than self-deport. We're still working. Jared Brown, actually, Senator Jared Brown sent a very harsh letter to the State Department. Why the State Department does not do anything about this situation. The struggle continues for Jamal, and we are open. And I was actually hopeful that Jamal will be here in Youngstown when I came in. But unfortunately, we are going to have them here sometimes, hopefully this summer. And we'll let you know. And thank you very much, and we appreciate you.
One last thing. Please remember that there's a website called If Americans Knew. If Americans Knew. It's entry level, it's thoroughly cited. So when you have neighbors or friends or students or anybody that wants to learn about this issue, they can go there and learn the history and see the facts, and it's a resource for people to use.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask anybody in the audience about if they are from the 1948 area and villages, and to stand up their name and the name of their village.
Yusuf. Go ahead.
Yusuf Rizk.
My name is Yusuf Rizk. I'm from Kafr Anna, that's in the Galilee, northern part of the Galilee. بالعربي الجليل الأعلى. قضاء صفد. On the borders of Lebanon, we are totally Christian Maronites. Only one family is Catholic, and our village totally destroyed. Our church, we are split, some inside the occupied land, and mainly we are in Lebanon, and like me, I am here. And there is a lot of stories, but they tried to convince my father to sell his land. And in the 50s, because through the United Nations, like family gathering, United Nations agreed, Lebanon agreed. When they sent it to Palestine, my father was working in Nazareth, and they called him to Jish, which is a small town next to our village. And they offered him at then, in the mid-50s, 84,000 Guinea sterling, and he told them, my land is not for sale. Then they gave him time so as to think. Then he came back and they told him, what did you? He told them, still my land not for sale. And then they told him, you have to report to this station, which is about, then was buses from Nazareth to Jish. to report 3 times a day, then what does mean? Mean no job, cannot eat. And then he ran away to us, to Lebanon, and a lot of stories.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a book about Kafr Anna. They think that we forget, there's pictures and everything about Kafr Anna. I have 2 books here.
Yeah.
If anybody would like
That's
to
what
read
I have.
it. Yeah, thank you.
Next.
And I
Salam.
hope all the young people are recording all of these stories from their
He's streaming live.
That's wonderful. Well, I mean, but when you go home, all of you young people, find, get a tape recorder, a video camera, or your smartphone, actually.
Yeah.
And just have your parents and your grandparents tell story after story after story. This is history that must be preserved, and you can do it.
Salam.
Yeah, my name is Salam Al-Wani, born and raised in Jenin, but my mother and father are from Al-Fahm, which is in northern of Palestine. Now, in 1948, when the creation of Israel, my dad and my uncle were teaching in Jenin, and they occupied Al-Fahm, and my mother and father, they didn't see their family from 1948 until 1967. It's a very sad story. I can now remember my mom, how she had us all without any help of her mother or sisters or anybody. But this is one of the stories.
Thank you.
I'm from المزارعة قضى اللد ورملة. كان عدد أهل كل المزارعة دار الرمحي وفي حمايل بس كلهم من عائلة واحدة و I think هاجروا على رمطيس بعديها على دير غسالة وبعديها على شو اسمه على البيرة والرمحية all over يعني من هجر على الأردن على everywhere ما شاء الله عدد كبير.
عدد الرمحية 35,000 صار.
الله يخليك. anybody else? حمودة من ورا. حمودة. احكي لنا من أي بلد؟ محمود قاسم. I wanted to say from what city you were, your family.
My father from Petra, which is close to Southern. My mother from Akka, Iqrit. They were cleansed out of Palestine in 1948. And they came to Lebanon, and they came to South Lebanon first. They stayed for a week or 2, and then they came to Al-Nabka. Al-Nabka is one of the biggest refugee camps in South Lebanon. So therefore, we were born there, and we grew up there. And my grandmother always had the key to her house, because they told them that they're going to leave for a week and they're going to go back. And you know, we heard a lot of stories about how the Israelis have used the Joshua method, where they were going from village to village, killing Palestinians to send a message to the others to leave. And we heard a lot of stories from the grandfather, the uncle, the aunt. My uncle, who was serving in the British Army, that he left his helmet in the house, and my mother has to go back so quick to get it because they were afraid they're going to find out that he served in the British Army. And she told us she was so scared when she went in to pick it up and bring it home. And my father was a shepherd, and they have about 100 acres. I still have the deeds of some of that property in the village. And my father was a shepherd, and he told me, they used to make cheese, they used to take milk for supper to the city to sell all their products. So my father in Lebanon, he has to learn, he was 18 years old when he left. He has to learn everything from scratch. So he went back to school, to trade school, and he learned how to do a body shop and paint cars. So in Lebanon, he had his own business. But in Lebanon, because we're not Lebanese, we're Palestinian, we cannot own land, and we cannot have our own business. So my father, what he has to do, he will work under a Lebanese guy and give him 15% of the gross just to use his name to operate his business. And then we grew up there's a lot of things that the way we grew up as Palestinian and Hilwi, we grew up without any kind of electricity, no running water. I remember that we got electricity when I was 16 years old. And the civil war started in Lebanon when I was 14. And when the civil war started, the Syrian army came to the hill and we lived under bombardment for a long time. Then in 1982, Israel invaded South Lebanon. And they destroyed the camp completely. Because the objective of the Israelis' invasion of 1982 was to destroy the infrastructure of the Palestinian people. There's some homes, they were not destroyed. They destroyed it. And they took all the Palestinian male from age 16 to 60 and put us in detention camps. My father and I were placed there. I spent almost a year. And the food they gave us, it was not enough to fill a bird's stomach. Because their objective there in that detention camp to destroy us as men. Because my father and their group, all the old men, they took them aside and they brought an Israeli female. And she beat them, all of them, the old men, to destroy them completely. And with us, they used to give us like 1 apple for 8 people, because they want us to fight. They want us to fight as people. They'll give you a little bit of food to fight over. And in 1983, November of 1983, it was a Thanksgiving day. It was an exchange of prisoners between the PLO and Israel. So that's how we got out. And when I came back to the camp, from the detention camp, I didn't know where our house used to be. I have to ask some children in the camp to take me to the new house that my mother, she has to collect some money and build a small house, because my father and I were in the detention camp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have fun thing. There is a puzzle with 12 questions about the Nakba and Palestine, and 2 winners, $50 each. So I think my Kassis is gonna distribute that, and please feel free to fill it up, Google it, whatever, ask the next person, and then bring us a result. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Turn it over at one time. Put it down. Exactly. And at one time, you guys can turn it over.